Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie.
Welcome back to the trial of the century. Our friend Eternal Sunshine in one corner with, oh, who's that? Garden State. This is Eternal versus the State. We watched these two movies with the theme of the manic pixie dream girl. Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about the manic pixie dream girl? What is this trope?
Thanks for asking, Nick. Let me just, no, Manic Pixie Dream Girl is, I was actually reading the Wikipedia last night, so I'm going to the Wikipedia because there was a great sentence about it. But basically it's a trope of a female character who, okay, here's how it describes it. A young woman with eccentric personality quirks who serves as the romantic interest for the male protagonist, or one-dimensional. They exist only to provide emotional support to the protagonist or to teach him important life lessons. And then if, you know, the protagonist weren't in his scene, they would simply blip out of existence. But yeah, they're usually quirky. They have, they're outgoing. They have unique personality traits, colorful hair. It was interesting reading about it, though, because it traces it. I mean, I think it was coined around when these movies came out, but not for these movies specifically. But then they kind of trace the trope back in like cinema history. Yeah. But I think we really hit the like
peak,
the like modern nadir of this thing, and it's a
peak
fascinating
pixie,
comparison.
Duh.
Peak pixie.
It was there the whole time.
Yeah.
I just realized we didn't introduce ourselves.
Oh my
too.
God.
So who's here to discuss this? Well, it's me. It's Nick, your host, and
Patrick, your other host.
and we are really going to start into this. I think that I kind of just want to dive in. Which movie do you want to start with?
I think Eternal Sunshine, because I don't want to spoil anything here, but I think we just have more to say about this one.
We need a ramp.
Yeah, we'll be more excited to talk about this one, and then we can really come down on Mr. Braff.
Yeah.
Now we'll see how we feel.
Zachy,
maybe it'll be a surprise.
Don't worry,
here.
it'll be fine. Okay, so Eternal Sunshine. I'm just gonna say right off the top, I am biased in that it is probably one of my top 5 favorite movies.
Okay.
And if I was in my 20s, this would be a movie where I'd be like, oh, you want to know who I am? Here, look at this indie movie. I love this movie. Wow. Great. Practical effects. Again,
yes.
Practical effects.
Yeah.
Anything you want to preface before we dive in?
I think it's an incredible movie. I think I did watch it in my 20s, and honestly, I think it works a lot better for me now, or just I relate to it a lot more now, interestingly enough. And yeah, I don't think I'm as high on it as you are.
Yeah.
But I think definitely looking at these two together and the similarities between them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so funny too, because like literally we watched both of these movies together, and after both of them you like stood up and I was like, so yeah, the movie, and you looked at me and you're like, no, and like walked out of the house because you didn't want to say anything. So I'm so excited to know what you said. So why don't we jump in and we'll do like a quick rundown of the plot, what is happening, and then we can like kind of throw in because I know you took notes and some general thoughts, so just stop me whenever.
Yeah.
But let's start. So this movie is really interesting in that I think it's almost better the second time through, and I'm sorry for you because you hadn't watched it in a long time, right? Or
yeah. I had watched it. It could have been 10 years ago, so I remembered broad plot strokes, but I do, because when it first came on, the first scenes come on, you were so excited.
I was like, oh my God, thing. Oh, look at this, oh my God, fun. And I apologize.
No, I remembered enough to remember, like, I'm pretty sure this is after everything's gone down and they're meeting again.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than like broad plot strokes, I didn't remember it exactly, but it's yeah, so it wasn't quite the like joy of discovering it for the first time where you're kind of trying to figure out how the timeline's working.
Yeah.
But
On a scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was I to watch this movie?
no, you were fine. It was perfectly fine. I don't mind. I'm not like a purist with movies where I'm like, no talking at all.
No talking. Yeah.
So no, I appreciate you like exuding your joy about it.
So, okay, we'll start out. So we wake up and we see this guy who's like getting out of bed. He's on a pull-out couch bed. And let me say first, something I really love about this movie
His jammies.
is jammies. No, the color grading, Patrick, color grading. I feel like it's so well done. Like the first scenes feel very washed out. It's almost like you took a DSLR camera and just like kind of shot around your neighborhood during kind of a bright day. It's a little bit too exposed, and I just thematically I was like, oh, this is so fucking good. Because you find out later why, but like throughout the movie, there's also kind of like a weird thing with like color where like her hair is like very intense, different colors, and he wears kind of like muted browns and stuff like that. And just kind of like darker colors. And so it kind of is this weird contrast that kind of shows their relationship right from the jump, which I think is really cool. But yeah, so his name is Joel, and he basically gets up, goes outside. Someone has hit his car with their car, and he thinks it's the person next to him. So he leaves a kind of a passive aggressive note, and he starts going to work, but then just kind of like runs away from the train platform and ends up going to the beach, like in
Montauk.
Montauk. I wanted to say Wampanoag. Montauk. So
It's like, this is an incredible Jim Carrey performance because he is mostly so restrained. The only part I feel like that's like very Jim Carrey to me is the part when he's running away, like to get on the other train to Montauk. So I'm like, that's not how a normal human runs. That's how Jim Carrey runs. But it works in context of the movie because it is this like subconscious like switch that's flipped in his head that's like
an
telling
intense,
him
like emotional drive or whatever. Again, this is going to be a very stop and start sort of plot thing. But Jim Carrey as this protagonist, I have no idea how, like, because I know he did like 24 and like a couple of other kind of horror-esque movies right after this.
Yeah.
And then kind of didn't do any movies after that for a while. So I know that his mental health was kind of all over the place. This is an incredible performance, I think.
Yeah.
I think that he is not the best of all of the performances in the movie, honestly. But I think that he has like this really interesting kind of sad sack energy that is so anathema to what I think of as Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Which is just so surprising to me. Like, did you, when you either first watched it or watched it again, where you're like, this is so weird, like have that kind of weird dissonance between the character and the actor kind of thing?
Yeah, it is. It is this like, very restrained performance. Very good. I think like Truman Show is around the same time.
Yeah.
Which he does, I think, get more chance to kind of do the hysterical side of it in Truman Show. But that's another one that, is like an incredible dramatic performance.
Yeah.
And I really love Truman Show. I can't remember which, I feel like I've heard an anecdote. I think it was him on one of these serious movies though, where the director would just like have to like pound him into the ground to get like a grounded like normal take because he would
start so big.
Everything that he his normal stuff is so big to like try to get him. I can't remember if it was this movie or not though. But yeah, it's
they said the actual process of filming this movie was brutal, like really hard, because it was only filmed in like a couple months kind of thing.
Really? Yeah.
And it was just like really, because there's a lot of night shoots. It was like really long shoots and also cold. And like you said, the director just had to like beat this performance into Jim Carrey. Okay, so he goes to Montauk, kind of sees this like weirdo on the beach, sits down and starts writing in his diary, realizes that he has not written in his diary for 2 years, ever since he broke up with kind of his girlfriend, who we never really, do we know her name even? Naomi, yeah. She was nice. Yeah. I really thought, I love that line. She's nice. But then does it cut back to him in like the past then, but there's a certain period where he's like talking. I think Clementine might come over and like they see each other on the platform, and that's sort of like where we see the manic pixie dream girl for the first time.
Yeah.
And we kind of see Clementine. She kind of comes over and is very off-putting on the train, but she's sort of like, "So what's up?" and like just starts like talking to him in a very abrasive, like, "Oh God, I'm very uncomfortable" sort of way. And you can feel that from Jim Carrey's performance as well. He's like, I do not want this right now. But it's really interesting because we learned so much about these two characters from this one interaction, where like Jim Carrey is not aggressive enough to be like, "Get out of here" or whatever. Like, "I don't want to talk to you." He's never willing to kind of stand up in that way. But he is constantly trying to get out of this situation of like this conversation. He's very like inside of himself. She is very like trying to drag anything out of him, trying to have any sort of like connection with him. And we find out that she's like drinking even though it's in the morning.
Yeah, that's part of it, is like she's like clearly not well in that sense, which I think is interesting in the context of the manic pixie dream girl trope, because it opens with that. Yeah. And I think as we'll talk about later, like this is the most of the movie you're not seeing Clementine in actual reality. You're seeing her in his memory.
Yeah,
so that, like
built his version of her.
Right. So it's really like the opening and the end of the movie that you're seeing like her in reality.
Yeah.
Or both of them in reality, I guess.
And there's two things that I really love to think about when it comes to that. And one is that these two people, the two people that you see, aren't super far apart from each other. Like, he doesn't create this person that's, oh, amazing, whatever, or like mean, awful, like always nuanced. Clementine, no matter when we see her, is very nuanced and interesting to watch. And going back to what you were saying about like the definition of like them blipping off screen if the men weren't there, right away we get enough about this character where we're like, man, she has a history. Like, something's going on with her. You know what I mean? Like, she's a real person that's like, you sort of start wondering like, what's going on with her? What's happening? You know what I mean?
Right. But it is interesting, like as a movie about, I think it's like such a movie about this relationship. And like, even I thought about it, like the characterization of both of them, you don't get to know that much about either of them outside of the context of their relationship with each other. I guess you see her job at the bookstore and him going to the bookstore, but you never like find out what he does for work. You see memories of his family, but that's also in context of like how he's, well, one, trying to like escape from the memory erasing, and like like dealing with his stuff with her, and you know, his, I don't know, his mom's friend and stuff. So it is interesting to like think, because I was trying to think about it in the context of like, okay, like how, you know, how does she exist like as a person outside of just like being there to serve him? But I do think it really is like, it's so much about the relationship between them and like the progression of a relationship. And
we'll also get to it, but I think that he needs her just as much as she needs him. You know what I mean? Yeah. In that, like, he doesn't have a whole lot of life motivation outside of this relationship either. Right. Like, we don't see these, like, even his friends are always talked about in the context of the relationship between them. You know what I mean? Like, when David Cross and everyone comes in and like talks about it, they're always talking about Clementine and the relationship or what's happening. It's interesting. I want to dig into that too. But first, they kind of keep talking to each other. She invites him over. They kind of have this weird thing that does like almost become sexual, but is also not. And then he kind of like leaves and calls her and is like smiling, having a good time. And then we kind of, at some point throughout all of this, kind of do a hard cut to Joel with his friends, David Cross, and I don't know what her name is. I don't know the actress. Yeah, let me see. But even before that, because it's a whole like cold, I don't know, I'm trying to think now. Because isn't it a whole cold open until we get the credits, and the last thing is Elijah Wood coming up to the window? Yes, that's just before. So they have like that back and forth of him being like, yeah, like, let me come pick you up or whatever. And she's like, let me grab my toothbrush, and they're going to go somewhere. I've either they're going to Boston to the Charles, or they're going to.
I thought they already went. Don't they go?
No, yeah.
They go and then
back,
they come back and she's tired.
Yeah.
And he's
then,
like, yeah.
Do you want to like come over or whatever? And she's like, I'm just going to grab all my stuff. So
and then Elijah Wood jump scare. You're like,
Elijah Wood jump scare. I feel like Elijah Wood in this movie is an example of it. Try to run away from his sort of like waifish, like beautiful, ethereal looks so much, because like him in this and him in Sin City are so disgusting. They are sewage.
I know. That's like, I think where if I have any issues with this movie, it's some of the side plot stuff I could do without. And I think honestly, Elijah Wood's probably the biggest hang up for me.
Oh, he's so gross.
Because he is just like, it's just like too, he's just like a little too villainous to like buy it.
But also kind of like an idiot. We'll get there. Yeah. So then we cut back to him with his friends, and by him I mean Joel, with his friends, and he's kind of ranting and raving about like Clementine, like she like acted like I wasn't there, all this kind of stuff, or like he's basically just talking to them after he tries to go and like reconcile with her after like a big fight. And they pull out a piece of paper that says Clementine has erased Joel from her memory. Please like never mention Joel in Clementine's presence again.
Which is insane.
It's so
the mechanics
wild.
of the technology in this, which I love. Like it's I don't even know. There's probably a term for it. It's not like magical realism, but it's like the sci-fi equivalent of that, where you have a perfectly normal, believable world in every other way, and you like assume this takes place concurrently with when it came out in like 2004, but then there just happens to be this business
and it is presented as a scientific sort of medical business.
And everything feels like very realistic, but it is like this fantastical thing. It makes me, there's another movie by the same director, Michel Gondry, Be Kind, Rewind.
Yes.
Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
I loved that movie as a kid. I don't think it's really got any like staying power in the culture. I'd be really curious to watch that again.
We should.
But it has a similar thing where like Jack Black's character just gets magnetized and then deletes all the anyways. So but I love how the whole technology is portrayed. But I do think there is also an aspect of like the kind of messiness of the technology, and like I think it's intentional in the movie that like it doesn't really work.
No,
like we see this kind of through multiple ways. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, so we should continue on the track of the plot. But I think the side plots kind of are to like help illustrate that like
this is,
you can't really erase someone.
Yeah, right. And so because like, and it's kind of brought out that like and Kate Winslet plays Clementine in a fantastic performance. I think she did great.
She's so good.
But yeah, so they're like, oh, you always know Clementine was so impulsive or whatever. Like she didn't mean anything by it, but she has done this and you need to move on. So he decides, he's like crying, really affected, throws this tape that she made him out the window of his car, and then like basically runs into the doctor's office and is like a crazy person and is like, give me the operation, give me the procedure. And so they have this thing where he gathers up all of the things that he ever reminds him of her, gather it all up, have this interview where they can like chat through the entire relationship and everything about her so that they can like place it on a map of his brain. And then that night he's going to like drink this fluid to put him to sleep, and these technicians are going to come and essentially erase all of the memories. So that is the basic premise of this, is that there is a technology in the world erases memories of specific individuals or people. And like one of my favorite parts is when he goes into the doctor's office, like anytime throughout the movie, you just see the other people that are there.
Yes.
And there's like someone with like all this dog stuff.
Yeah.
There's somebody with what kind of seems like is like his kids stuff. And like, there's a lot of things in there, man. And they're all crying. It's just like always just miserable.
And you hear, I think in the first scene, I can't remember if it's Kirsten Dunst on the phone, they're talking to someone about having the procedure done for the third time, which is also like a funny line, but I think also kind of plays into this idea of like you can't, how hard it is to actually erase someone from your life.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because like I remember that, and I've always assumed it was like the person trying to get the procedure done again,
Right.
For
I do think
another person.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Okay.
Which I think is also
That's also
because the movie is always like the main, I would say, thematic thrust of this movie. Like you said, like you can't erase someone from your life, but also one of the main things it kind of contends with is even if it is super painful, if a relationship is important, isn't it worth having? And we can talk about whether that's true or not, because I think that it's kind of more nuanced maybe than the movie makes it out to be.
Yeah.
But I always like the doctor office scenes because it's like these people, the other people in this world are like super into this procedure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he goes, he has it done as well. He puts himself to bed in this like big, actually he kind of just like falls down because he took this drink of something that sedates him, and he just kind of falls down in his, room, I guess.
Yeah. In his jammies.
Yeah, in his jammies.
Nice jammies.
He has really nice jammies. Also, were the jammies provided by the doctor's
I don't
office?
know.
Because he has these little bags and he takes them out, and I'm like, is this us supposed to be like, oh, he's such a neat freak or whatever, or is it just like a packaged?
That's a good question. It feels incongruous with his character because he's sleeping on a pull-out bed.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't seem like the kind to have button-down jammies.
Yeah.
So good question.
And also like his house is like so sterile and empty, which is I think really cool to see, versus Clementine's when we see her either through the memories or when he visits, and she has like the potato people and all that kind of stuff.
I forgot about the potato people.
Yeah. And also what I think is like a kind of a small thing that they put in is that he draws and writes.
Yeah.
But when they come in to see him, basically he's taken all of the art in his life and he's like stuffed it in the bag that reminds him of Clem and has taken it away. So there's just like kind of a bare surrounding after that, which I think is I just like it. I think it's a great little detail. And so he kind of goes to sleep, and Mark Ruffalo,
Also jump scare.
Ruffalo, yeah.
Jump scare.
Oh yeah, he actually does jump out at one point. They come in and they do sort of like the procedure on him, and then for most of the movie after that, we are in his mind as he goes from memory to memory.
Yes.
What did you think of, like, because you were saying we mostly see Clementine in his mind. Does that do something like, do you feel like that? Like, I don't like that, or I want to see more of them out in the real world, or like,
no, I think it's just interesting. It's just thoughts that occurred to me after watching the movie because, it doesn't really flag itself as you're watching it. And you basically get, kind of the function of it is you get a relationship told in reverse chronological order. So where you see, the worst of it,
bad stuff
from the start. But you also see like kind of how trivial the breakup was, that it was just kind of something done like in a fit of emotion, like in the aftermath of a fight. And then, you work back through the kind of the steady period and then into the like exciting early period. So that was like the first thing that like flagged to me, because I was like, oh, he erases the breakup because they go in reverse chronological order. And then once he's erased the breakup, then he's like, wait.
I never clocked that.
Yeah. He's like, wait, no. I don't want to get rid of this. Cause it's when, I think, is it first when they're like laying on the couch and he's like, oh, I could see your underwear. When he's like, wait, I want to stay.
Yeah, well, I think that he's like in a weird, bizarro version of the doctor's office when he's like, I don't want this done anymore. And then it cuts to him there and he's like, oh, I remember this. And I think it's also interesting that they did it in that scene too, or that memory, because like you said, there's like essentially the whole memory is, oh, I could see her panties, and then was like, oh, I want to have sex.
Yeah.
And that's like the whole memory. But then it starts, he chooses a more emotional path where he's like, oh no, this isn't about that. Like, I need to save you in my brain because I love you so much.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that you picked that out of like, there was this bad moment that got erased, and then that's when that switches. Because I always kind of like just took it that he always remembered her, like remembered all the memories until they were all deleted. But I think that you're right in that we're seeing like an interesting version of that, like how he responds to things, and maybe his self projection of Clementine changes how deep they go. You know what I mean? Because there is a point where Clementine, when they're in like the baby boy memory, where she is much more expressive, I would say, and she's like, I love this kitchen, like, oh my god, like all this kind of stuff, and it has always felt to me like, this is the first time I've sort of seen this side of her. But it might be because all of those other sides that he was focusing on have been kind of erased from his memory, and these are the parts that are left, which are so much more positive.
I'd be curious to know like how much of the characterization was like deliberate in that, and I feel like it is maybe like a cynical read of the movie, like that perspective, but I also think Charlie Kaufman's kind of a cynical guy.
He definitely is.
I feel like this is, I think it is just interesting to consider the portrayal of her as like, it is kind of like what he needs in that, because then she kind of is like his guide and is like pushing him through.
Because there definitely is like a certain part where they stop, because they're basically, all these memories are being erased. He comes to the conclusion of like, I don't want Clementine to be erased from my brain. I want to keep her, like she's too important. And so then he starts trying to like hide her in other memories and taking her along to other places within his mind so that he can maybe hold on to her. I think that it is a little bit more of a cynical read, but I still think it works in the general sort of plot arc, because once you do take off this, like they were having trouble. They were obviously having trouble expressing what they wanted and what they needed and what they weren't doing. So it's not like a great relationship. And I don't think the movie ever pretends like it is.
I don't think so.
But I like that when this first like big thing that made them break up is erased, and his memories of wanting to get the procedure are erased, then what is left is just like, oh no, I actually do like this person.
And I think we can get to it kind of at the end too, like thinking about what the movie's like trying to say and portray. But I think it's just like it's an extremely relatable portrayal of a relationship, or like this is how like the trajectory of relationships go, is like you fall in love, you get together with someone, you fall in love with them, you might break up, and then over time you get back together, and maybe, you know, when you do get back together, it's exciting again, and so you're not thinking about the things that, or you know, you're ignoring the things that led to the breakup before, or feel like you've reconciled them, and then either the cycle repeats or it works, you know, it works better this time. So
we'll get to it, but so then they're going through, and this is also when we see the technicians come in, the B plot of the movie. And it's Elijah Wood as sort of like this junior technician, Mark Ruffalo, who's like has all this like computer set up and everything, and he's the one deleting the memories. Kirsten Dunst is the like girlfriend of Mark Ruffalo.
But she also works there.
She also works there as a secretary. They're all kind of like there, and it immediately is like, these people are huge pieces of shit. Because at least the two guys are like, oh, like, what's going on? How are you? And they're like, fuck it, like, go find whiskey or whatever. Like, go find the beers. And they have like a cooler of beers and everything like that. And they are just like not caring about the person, really. They're just like, this is my job,
right? But they're so insufferable to you. They're like,
they are.
It would be so annoying to hang out. Like Kirsten Dunst is like quoting Nietzsche, and then is also just like waxing about the doctor, which obviously comes in later. And then obviously Elijah Wood sucks. Even Mark Ruffalo's character, they're just like, they're like listening to rock and roll and dancing in their underwear and like getting, I don't know.
I will say, and this is the thing you were alluding to earlier, and it's just like a problematic thing, but I think still it doesn't make me hate this movie, which some early 2000s movies I watched and I'm like, I hate this movie. But
foreshadowing.
The thing that is interesting is that he makes them so despicable in sort of like an uncaring way, if that makes sense. Like Elijah Wood, it is revealed, gathered up all of Joel's stuff that he brought in to get like to dump Clementine, and all of the memories that Clementine gave them about what Joel did and like how they fell in love and everything, and then goes back to like court and try to woo Clementine.
Yeah, no, I think that's like probably the most cynical part of the movie. And I do remember when I first watched it, I think that that whole plot, rubbed me the wrong way. And I even think Mark Ruffalo's character, there's a like kind of one of the final scenes after. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead again, but it's revealed that Kirsten Dunst and the doctor had a relationship. And had the procedure. Do we think they both had the procedure?
No.
Just
he
her.
remembers. And this is the thing that I thought is like, he is disgusting as well.
He's disgusting. But then there's the whole thing where the wife slaps Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
And then at the end, Kirsten Dunst is like tearfully leaving, and she's like, "You didn't know, did you?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I didn't know." I think he knew.
Yeah.
Because he would have been the one to do it.
Yeah.
And the way the wife goes right for him was like, you knew what was happening here, and you let this happen.
Absolutely disgusting. These people. It's just like the predatory, like it really is sort of like thematically it kind of works in a weird way of that, like the rebound person after like some great love or whatever is you trying to find the things you liked about that other person consciously or subconsciously in this other new person to kind of prove that like there's other things out there. And I kind of feel like maybe that's why it's in there that Elijah Wood and Mark Ruffalo like are in these relationships with these women, kind of pretending to be in a real relationship because they are not sharing anything about themselves. Right. You know what I mean? They're all just posing and pretending to be someone else.
Right.
And so I think it's really interesting that that's there too, because that is sort of like part of relationship breakup cycles. But it does, like you said, it's just kind of big ick. Big ick. Because there's like this other thing too where Elijah Wood's like, yeah, he like stole her underwear. And he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But like doesn't have any sort of, weird. I don't know. Yeah.
Now, it made me a little sad too because I really like Tom Wilkinson, who plays the doctor, and he just R.I.P. just tragically passed away earlier this year, and I feel like he does tend to play like a villainous role, but for most up until the reveal, he's
just a doctor.
He seems pretty on the level, and so I was like, I forgot that he's the bad guy in this.
And it's also kind of a thing of like, of course he's like that, and of course he employs these people because like who else would do this? You know what I mean? It's I will say the script is awesome. I love this script. It even the parts that were like bleh is like it's in there for a reason.
It's incredibly well written. And
it's not like a certain other movie that we may be talking about where there's a scene where one character just drops like the R word over and over and over for no reason.
There's a reason. We'll talk about it.
But okay, so we're getting too much in the weeds. But so they go through it, but then there's something wrong because Joel has been trying to actively run away and stop the procedure from inside of his brain. It starts having problems for the people who are now, like you said, dancing in their underwear and smoking and having sex around as he was being erased, essentially. And the doctor has to come over and try to put it back on track. And Elijah Wood leaves because Clementine in real life is having just a mental breakdown and is crying all the time. It's like, what is happening to me? Like, I don't know why I'm like this. And so the doctor comes over. And like you said, they hit the guy back. They get Joel back on track and like continuing to delete the memories, which is so tragic because like if they were more attentive or even more like interested in the humanity of Joel, there are several scenes where he's like trying to get their attention from inside of his brain and his body's like opening its eyes and like doing weird stuff. And they just don't care because they're not paying attention, which is like, God, what an indictment of the medical system.
I think they're like, when you paid for, I think even if they noticed, they would be like, no, you paid for this procedure, like you have to have it done. But I think they allude like this hasn't happened before. Where someone's like gotten lost like this, which I think I'm overthinking some of this too. Cause I was thinking about like, okay, in the memory of Joel, in Joel's memory at the end, Clementine whispers to him, go to Montauk. And then she also goes there. So that made me think, because I'm like, this is his memory of her, but obviously there's another connection there. But I was like, she already had I'm overthinking this. I'm like, she already had the procedure done. And they said no one had tried to do this before, so she didn't try to escape during the procedure.
Yeah.
But did something
how would
happen
you
in
know?
hers?
You know what I mean?
True. Did something happen in hers where Joel whispered to her, go to Montauk? So there's this kind of like parallel thing.
I'm seeing the possibility of a reboot.
That's what this is really due for. We should both of these movies. So we get a new Garden State
and a new Eternal Sunshine.
I think if there was a new Garden State, Zach Braff would still make it.
Oh, I don't know if I want to see that then. Anyway.
All right, sorry. It's unimportant. I was just thinking too much about the technical aspect of this, but
yeah. So we're actually approaching what I think is the most beautiful scene in like a lot of movies. There's a moment where it veers very close into a horror movie where like all of the memories are because he's in the bookstore and he's like talking to her being like, what do we do? And then all the book covers are blank, which, oh my God, the practical effects, Patrick,
it's
they're so good.
I would love to see a Michelle Gondry and Charlie Kaufman horror movie.
Oh my God, that would be really good.
We talked about it a little bit. I'm thinking of Ending Things. Not a horror movie, but there is, I feel like similarly some surreal, disturbing elements where you're like,
I haven't seen it yet because Alice and I want to watch it, but she loves Charlie Kaufman, like her favorite scriptwriter kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we'll eventually see it.
But so much of the visual stuff. Yeah, you could definitely recut this and be like the thing where they like recut a trailer.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of the stuff with people without faces, the part where you have
or like deformed faces, and I don't mean deformed in like some sort of like mutation or like injury. It's like
they're like
Slender
angular
Man.
and like polygons. And then my favorite is the Elijah Wood hair face.
The hair face,
he keeps turning around.
Yeah, because he's never seen his face. So good.
Yeah.
But also, it's like Clem gets like pulled into the darkness at one point and he like loses her.
Yes.
So scary, dude.
Yeah.
And then it's just like him in a car with his friends, David Cross and everything. I also want to talk about their relationship at some point because that's interesting to me. And they're driving to this beach and they go out on the beach and it's the time that he met Clementine. And it sort of becomes... At this point, it shifts him from just experiencing the memory to sort of like commentating on it as well. Because he's like, I met you like this. I thought it was like you were the coolest person there or whatever. And like, I couldn't believe that you were talking to me. And then they start talking and you see part of the memory, but then it kind of shifts into like, oh, we didn't do this in the memory. Like, we didn't do this in actual life. And she's like, well, we can do it right now. And so it's sort of like this weird thing where it's like it is an interesting thing, like you were saying, where I guess if you were to look at it purely logically, it's his construction of Clementine in his head that he is going through these memories, erasing and all that kind of stuff. But she stays fairly consistent through. And also at the end, she has like full on sort of like philosophical talks with him about all of the different things that kind of went wrong in their relationship. And it's never like told like, you were like this, I was like this, and we just didn't work. It was more like, I really like you. And like, I don't want to forget you. Man, I think one of my favorite scenes in like any movie is when they're running around that empty house on the beach and he's like, no, like this is the end of the memory. Like, this is my last memory with you. Like, we can't keep going. He's like trying to stop her, which I think is also sort of like thematic of the relationship of him sort of being this like guardrail kind of figure. But then they go into the house and she's like, and then what happens? And he's like, oh, I leave. This is it. And she's like, you could stay this time.
Right.
And then the whole house starts breaking around them, which is a practical effect. They literally pushed a fucking house into the ocean. And
wait, you were serious about that?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said that as a joke.
No, it is a practical effect. That's why it looks so good.
Oh my God. A full ass house.
Yeah.
What? They had the budget to do that?
They literally built sort of like, at least the set, like enough of the house that they could push it into the ocean.
That's insane.
So that when like the water's coming in and like filling up the house and it's falling apart, it's cracking. That's all just because that's what's happening. Like
it looks incredible.
It looks
but that was, I had screenshotted the quotes from that part too, because he talks about he walked out the door they're talking about the memories being in. And he's like, I walked out the door, and she's like, why? And he's like, I don't know. I felt like a scared little kid. Call back to the...
Because we see the scene of him being bullied as a little kid and
he's
doing
like,
something that he doesn't want to do, which is to kill that bird or whatever.
so sad. And then he's like, being a kid sucks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like this just gets deep into his thing where she was like, was it something I said? And he's like, yeah, you said so go with such disdain, you know? And then, it comes to, she's like, what if you stayed this time? And he's like, I can't, there's no memory left. I have to go. And then that's when she whispers the like, come to Montauk thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that scene, I think that scene got all of us maybe in the room.
Yeah.
During that part.
a little misty.
Yeah. I think we're all feeling it a little bit. Yeah.
It's just so beautiful because it's like, it kind of perfectly encapsulates a feeling that is my favorite feeling when I watch movies or anything, which is that sort of like bittersweet, like this is ending, but I've realized that I really love you. You know what I mean? It is. Sorry, I just whacked the mic. But it's just like, it's just so beautiful of its simplicity. It's not something crazy. It's just one person on the top of a set of stairs and like them talking to each other.
And it's like, I think you get the actual breakup, which is a very dramatic storming out in a huff. We had a fight breakup, but then you get this,
and
which
it's
is
so stupid. Like it is literally him being cruel. Like he is mean in that point. But she just came home drunk and drove drunk and like crashed part of his car, which maybe in the early 2000s that had a different connotation. But like now you're like, this person's a psycho. But it's also like they both were in the wrong. They both did shitty things. And like
but then you get that. I feel like this is the other breakup scene where kind of what you were saying, where it is like we love each other, but like there's no that we can't, you know. And I feel like that's how I think breakups happen in a lot of ways, but like that's how it happens sometimes.
No, I mean, like I've even had a breakup in my life where I was like I love you, but this is not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't work. And then slowly I was like, oh, this is horrifying. I actually lived because we shared an apartment in college. There was 6 of us. There's 6 of us. Everyone went home for the final summer, like gone. And my girlfriend at the time and I broke up right as, school was ending forever. And I was going to come back to the States. I went to school in Canada and we had this sort of breakup. There's a lot of reasons behind it, but it was very like, we both loved each other still. And then we had to live for that summer in the same apartment.
Oh my God.
Different rooms, but it was horrifying. I have some stories from that, man. But yeah, so like in this too, it just like perfectly encapsulates that feeling of those moments of like, this is the end. We know it and we don't really want it to be. But the movie goes on from there. It then kind of like cuts back and it's like, this is why the beginning of the movie was like that, because he's going to Montauk because that's where they met. And so you go there. And then throughout all of this, it's also like Clem is kind of freaking out because she's like, I'm having all these mood swings. I don't know what's happening. And it's because the fucking medical assistant has been like digging up these memories and parroting them back to her.
I can't remember. Is it revealed that she kept some of the drawings, or do you just see them? Maybe you see them in Elijah Wood's back. But at some point you see some of the drawings. Does she find them?
Yeah, she finds all of the stuff.
So then she sees them and you're like...
She's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. But she also takes him because there's this beautiful scene and it's a memory and also in person. But the memory of them going out onto the Charles, which is not the Charles, but they go out into this very rural part of the Charles. And they just essentially like lay down on the ice and have this like very nice night together. And Elijah Wood, she's like, let's go to Boston. Let's go to Charles. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. And starts like doing the bit of what Joel did during that date, and it freaks her the fuck out. And she's like, no, we're going right now. Like, I can't do this. But she doesn't know what's happening. Also, it's just like, what a weird, fun problem for a character to have. Like, subconsciously, you're like, this is bad. Like, this is not supposed to be happening. But you're like, I don't know why. So she's like so messed up. And that's when she kind of goes to Montauk and runs into Joel. And then we kind of go back to the doctor's kind of B plot, because Kirsten Dunst's character finds out that she was in a cheating relationship with the doctor before, because it's very clear throughout the movie she has a crush on the doctor. It becomes more of the case, and then she kisses him again. Like you said earlier, the wife comes and kind of breaks it up and is like, I'm done with you, this is twice. And then she's like, wait, twice? And he's like, yeah, you got the procedure done. And so she goes and she finds all the tapes of all the interviews they do with people, and she plays hers, and it's basically her just sobbing, being like, I don't want to do this, and him being like, you agreed to it. Fucking horrifying. Like, that's evil. That's so evil.
Yeah, it's terrible. And she's, I mean, she's so young in this.
Yeah, she is really young. She must be like 25 or less, you know?
I think less than that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's like just maybe post like Spider-Man 2 era.
Yeah, I think this would be just off of Spider-Man.
But but then she
finds all the others as
right,
well. Yeah.
And then she quits, confronts Mark Ruffalo, and then takes the tapes, and then I guess we find out. I think they get them in the mail, and then we find out.
Yeah, she mails them out to everybody.
Yeah, which she mailed them. She must have overnighted them because it is
She's like, I have to do this.
Yeah, because it's like the same day. It's after the whole toothbrush thing. It's like right after that, right? She goes in and is like, I have this tape, because then she plays it in the car.
Yep.
Right.
And she hears herself talking about how shitty he is. And she kind of like throws it out and is like, because he like also hears it and is like, what the fuck is this? Like, why are you doing this to me? Because he also doesn't have any memory of it. So he's like, you're a psycho. I'm out of here. She shows up at his place being like, no, like I have to be there. And there's this great scene where the neighbor twice, like in the middle of the movie, he's like, oh, hey, Joel, how's Clementine? And he's like, who the fuck are you talking about? Whatever, neighbor. And like walks by, and then she shows up and he's like, Clementine, let me like let you in. Very good. And then they go up into Joel's apartment, and he is listening to his tape about how shitty she is.
Yeah.
And there's this moment, and I think it's such a great moment and such an interesting way for it to end, where she's like, no, I want to listen to this. But then she's like, no, I'm not going to fucking do this. You're so mean in this tape.
Yeah, he's being incredibly mean. And you hear, this is one of the things where we are watching with the subtitles, so we're seeing everything that's saying, but it's in the background. But as they're kind of having their like, I have to try to remember exactly, kind of as, they have their reconciliation and like decide to stay together, it's still playing in the background. And I feel like it is this kind of thing of like thinking about this like as a metaphor for a relationship in the normal world where this technology doesn't exist. Of like, you have that kind of like echo in the back of your head that you're hearing of like,
don't do
these are this person's flaws, and you're kind of like, that doesn't really ring a bell. Like,
you're
like
I guess it makes sense,
but you're like, no, I think we can make this work. And
that's such a good, again, a little cynical, but I love that read of like that this is the allegory of like, me, I'm picking up some red flags.
Yeah. And I don't think it has to be like, I don't think it means that that their relationship is doomed, but I also don't think the end of the movie is suggesting that it's perfect for each other. I do think it's suggesting that you have connections with people that like will continue to draw you to that person.
But at the end, we should just finish this out before it really whacks. But they are in a hallway. She's running away, and he's like, hey, like, I think we should give this a try. And she's like, even after all the things I said and like what you said, and he's like, I don't know that guy. Like, let's try. Yeah. And there's this like long moment of them looking at each other, and then it sort of fades out.
And then the last shot too is the repeating them running away on the beach in Montauk, but it's like really, and then it fades to white actually, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's them sort of like pushing each other in the sand, having a good time. Which like personally, what I would say is like, because the last time we saw that, it was him trying to stop that to prevent the memory from ending. Yeah. And the way that memory ends is him deciding whether or not he can stay. And in my beautiful little mind. It's like, for me, it's like, oh, he's chosen to finally be vulnerable and to stay.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think that the movie is like saying that perfectly, and it says a lot of other things very clearly. So I'm not sure if that is the read I'm supposed to be doing, or it could just be like, oh, cyclically it's begun again. But I really like to think that I love the message that even if it's not going to end well, it's worth experiencing. You know what I mean?
And I think that's a valid way to read it. And there is like growth in the characters.
Yeah,
and, like, in the
which is so
relationship with each
weird
other.
because they literally had all of the things that would make them grow erased out of them. But I guess that it is also kind of saying that you can't erase this kind of thing, that these people leave like fingerprints on your brain that you can't quite get rid of.
Right.
Which I kind of also like. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about this movie. Now we can talk in a free range way about anything. The thing I'm interested in this movie, I don't know how I feel about, is the David Cross and his girlfriend's relationship. And I'm sorry that I keep saying David Cross. I don't remember their character names, and he's the only actor name that I remember.
David Cross is in something, unless he's Tobias from Arrested Development, he's David Cross.
Yeah, absolutely. But like their relationship is also not great. They're always fighting at each other, and they seem to not like each other, but they stay together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. It could be just Charlie Kaufman being cynical and being like, see, even the people still together hate each other. Like love is suffering. And like, I don't know, but I don't.
Maybe. I don't know if I read that they necessarily hate each other. They just feel like an established, steady relationship. Like they've clearly been together for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time.
Versus the whole thing of Joel and Clementine's relationship is this experience of like a new love and relationship and like how that trajectory plays out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just like gives some like contrast,
like
and
long-term
context.
perspective of like, this is never going to get better. You know, like you're always going to have your differences, but you're like, it can work.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. What did you think about, because you said you didn't like it as much as me, but like what other thoughts did you have about this movie? Because we literally have not talked about anything that we thought about in this movie yet. We saved it all for the podcast. So like, what do you?
No, I think I've said a lot about how I feel about it. I just think I think it's aged incredibly well.
Yeah. Which is surprising because other than the fact that we've watched other movies of that era recently and they did not hold up well, I was like, this could be such a tricky like topic to cover, because like relationship mores change with time and all that kind of thing, but it still is like chef's kiss.
Yeah, it looks great. The soundtrack is incredible. The performances, even the style of the movie, I'm like, this is what people look like now. We're back in 2004, baby.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting that like the actual shooting of the movie, it's gritty. It's not glamorous at all.
No.
These people are not, really well off. They don't, like, their clothes are kind of drab.
Yeah.
They're not rich or anything. It's very much like this is just like an everyone story. And a lot of Charlie Kaufman's movies are like that. It's like the main protagonist figure is never some sort of glamorous hero. It's always like kind of a dirtbaggy average Joe. You know what I mean?
It's a guy.
Yeah.
It's a guy. He's not really, he's not clean shaven.
Yeah.
He clearly doesn't like his job. He's trying to, No, I do really like this movie. I think just, it got me emotionally, and I think it's one that's like totally worth revisiting.
Yeah,
I watch it a lot.
This movie is still, even upon a revisit, still in my top 5. I think I just really love this movie. One thing I want to talk about specifically about Manic Pixie Dream Girl stuff. This is my argument for why Clementine is not a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Her weird quirkiness in air quotes, I guess, is not like a glamorous thing. Like, it causes a lot of problems, and for both of them, you know what I mean? Like, it is one of the reasons why their relationship is rocky. And her quirkiness as well. Like, she has a really wonderful monologue, which I feel like people kind of attribute to a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but I would say is kind of the opposite of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Yeah,
because
I absolutely agree. Well, I think it's like it like comes off as somewhat tropey, but I think only because this became a trope
After.
this movie came out. So I think you can like fit it into the box, but the whole point of the trope is that it's not a character that's like clearly defined and like is supposed to also, the main crux is that like their point is to save the male character. And I think this is the speech you're talking about where they like specifically address that in the movie. He's like, I thought you were going to save my life.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's
stupid.
That's stupid.
And you're stupid for thinking that
she
way.
says that too many guys think I'm a concept or I complete them or I'm going to make them alive, but I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours. Yeah. And then that's that. He's seeing that in a memory because he's like, I remember that speech really well. And she's like, I had you pegged, didn't I? And he says, you had the whole human race pegged. I still thought you were going to save my life even after that.
Yeah.
So I think especially in contrast to Garden State, which we'll talk about, because I also screenshotted a quote that's very similar to that, said in sincerity. I don't think this, can be considered that trope.
And another thing that I didn't catch until we were going through the plot, the point of view character actually does switch to her at the end. She is the one with the agency, and she is the one driving the plot at the very end where she goes to his house, she decides to leave, they have that talk, and then it's them on either side of the frame finally like looking at each other in real life again. Which is interesting because I feel like it sort of is like it takes two to tango, baby.
I think so, because even though he is the protagonist and the character whose point of view it's from, like I think it's a movie about the relationship between two people versus a movie about...
Much like Sex and the City, the relationship is the character. Exactly. But also, I would say this, in a classical sense of the word protagonist, the person who's affecting change upon the movie, I would say that Joel is not the protagonist. Because if you look at all of his memories and everything, he's actually not really like affecting any change. The big choice that he makes is to get Clementine erased from his brain. And then afterwards, she's the one who approaches him. She's the one who like strikes up something with him. He sort of has a weird kind of subconscious draw to her. They blah, 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 blah. But like she's the person who's affecting change upon the world. Yeah. And even him like getting the procedure is in response to her getting the procedure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, definitely.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Right after this, let's fucking tear this movie apart. Fucking Garden State right after this. Welcome to Tabletop. My name is Nick, and I think that fudging dice rolls is totally okay.
Hey, it's me, Franco, and rolling for initiative sucks.
I'm Daniel, and I think you should modify your first level characters as much as you want.
And I'm Shade, and if your TTRPG hasn't evolved into a LARP, you've done it wrong.
And we all host Tabletopped, a TTRPG podcast about all things games and storytelling.
And sometimes we have game designers, professional researchers, and even the occasional owlbear.
If this interests you, listen to Tabletop every Monday wherever you get your podcast. Welcome back to Movie versus Movie. We talked about... Oh, what a pleasure it was to talk about such a great movie. Eternal Sunshine. Mwah, so good. Let's talk about Garden State.
Yeah.
Another movie of this time.
Same year, 2004.
Critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
People fucking love this movie.
89% on Rotten Tomatoes. If you look at, Rotten Tomatoes, imperfect metric, but if you just look at that kind of thing or like the IMDb score, almost like somewhat indistinguishable from Eternal Sunshine, which is insane to me.
Yeah. Insane is right. Let me just say, I wish I could have the memory of this movie erased from my brain. It is, I think that this movie maybe could work with some major plot rewrite parts, but also the sheer amount of like pretense that is shoved into this movie, like it is so pretentious.
I just think the question is like, is this a story worth being told?
No.
And why? And the answer is, I don't think so. So I just don't see any like, there's hardly any merit to it in that respect.
Yeah.
I think to me, it feels like Zach Braff had some ideas about a lot of interesting visual, almost like gags. There's a lot of like visual gags and even some like plot, little things and like cobbled these together into this story.
I mean, we talked about it. The movie is constantly verging on being silly. But it never is. It's just the shots, like you said, like the visual gags and some of the writing and stuff. It's like kind of almost Scrubs, but never.
But it's like a New Yorker funny where like you're not laughing, you're like, which is like so annoying. Like, I feel like just be fun. Like Zach Braff is funny.
Yeah,
I'm like,
he's a great.
Make yourself
community.
funny.
Yeah.
You made yourself so insufferable in this movie. Why would you do this?
Yeah. Also, this within the first 5 minutes, I was like, I'm not gonna like this movie.
No, yeah, just
because every single shot. Did you notice this? Every single shot in the first 5 minutes involves his face staring directly down the camera.
Yeah, it's just there's just too much time with his mug, and he just doesn't like say much or like do much the whole movie.
Yeah, he doesn't really make any choices except for at the very end, and that choice is sort of like, it is not. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Also, I love that his name is Andrew Largeman, the actor from LA, who played a mentally handicapped person on a football team, and that's his like claim to fame.
Yeah. That's what I kind of like wrote down, because I was like, I felt like he had a lot of ideas or like gags or visual jokes that are like interesting. And that's like a lot of what is, I feel like, sustained of this movie in pop culture. I had seen a lot of these visuals before.
Yeah.
And in context for the movie, they just like, to me, just didn't land at all. You have like at the beginning is all white apartment and the medicine cabinet full of pills, or like the wallpaper shirt. The only one I think we audibly laughed at was the diploma on the ceiling, which was kind of funny.
But that one almost felt like Charlie Kaufman-esque. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of like, what is that? It's just like something weird in an otherwise kind of ordinary situation, other than the fact that the entire wall was filled with diplomas.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. And I feel like towards the end with the quarry scene, it almost felt like it was a little like Wes Anderson inspired, where it felt like just how the effect was done with like a diorama type stuff. But
Yeah, I didn't like it. I felt when they were screaming on is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It felt so out of place to the rest of the movie, because they never really use that in other places.
Yeah.
Like you said, it kind of feels like several short films kind of like crammed together, because that whole scene with them in the bottom of the canyon or whatever, like it doesn't what
There's a lot of the movie we were turning to each other and saying like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Because even just from a simple point of view of the plot and understanding what's going on, it just like doesn't do a good job of that. And it didn't feel like it was intentional, like a stylistic choice, because I'm like,
it might be though.
You think so?
Because he's like supposed to be a blank slate because of his medication.
That's
like he's
fair.
overly
We can talk about
medicated and he doesn't have any emotions anymore. He doesn't feel the world.
yeah.
And like, let's be fair, like having your father as your psychiatrist or whatever, probably not great.
That's bad.
That's
Yeah.
bad. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the fact that the other doctor that he sees is like, your dad should know better, but then never does anything like,
Right.
he should be arrested. Like his license should be taken away. Like there's stuff
That
there.
was like the best scene of the movie, because it felt like the most believable scene. I'm like, oh, there's somebody in this scene that is like,
has a tether to reality.
yeah, he's like, that's bad. You should probably be on that there's maybe a reason you're on that medication. You should see a real psychiatrist and determine, instead of just quitting your medicine.
Yeah.
But it's just like,
And also
God.
okay, so why don't we go through
Sure.
the plot?
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrew Largeman, Zach Braff, is an actor in LA. He wakes up in his all white apartment to his dad saying like, we can't communicate, blah, 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 blah. Your mom is dead. He has to go back home. He does so. And
he goes to work first though.
Yes.
Because he gets yelled at.
and there's the crashing plane.
There's the crashing plane.
But he isn't affected by it because he's like, fuck it, I don't care about anything.
He has no feelings.
Yeah.
And then he goes to work at a Vietnamese restaurant.
Yeah.
And he puts on the eye makeup, and you're like,
And that was the first thing where you're like, whew, that's
like,
not great.
And then, but then you get to see how shallow LA is, because they're so mean to him.
Yeah. They're like, don't you have bread? And he's like, this is not really that kind of restaurant. And they're like, I want bread. It's like, okay, man. as someone who has lived there his entire life or whatever, like, okay. All right. So then he goes home and he goes to New Jersey where this is set. Apparently, I was doing a little research. He is from New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah. That's like, apparently this is somewhat autobiographical.
All right.
And he attends his mother's funeral. There's this, I thought kind of like this is a scene I actually liked. Okay. So he's at the funeral.
Yeah.
And he sees like them all just like slowly shoveling shovelfuls of dirt onto the casket, and everyone's sad and blah, blah, blah. He looks up and just like 50 feet away, there's a backhoe ready to just push all the dirt onto the grave. And I thought they were trying to say like, oh, this is all sort of artifice, you know, like in reality, someone's just going to push a bunch of dirt and be done. But it turns out he knows the grave diggers, and they're like his friends from high school. And he gets invited to a party that night. So he goes home, and his dad is Bilbo Baggins for first
Importantly.
of all. Yeah, importantly. Also very strange role to see him in. I think he did great with what he was given.
Yeah.
Weird, but
credit.
yeah, okay. And he's like, is everything okay? He's like, I've been having these shooting headaches. Feels like I've been zapped or whatever. And he's like, okay, I'll make you an appointment with a doctor I know. He goes to the party, which I hated. I hated this party.
I hated it.
It's like all of them doing different types of drugs, and then like young women who might be high schoolers.
Yeah.
Like there is a line in the movie where they're like, she's 18 or is she 16? It's like, why is this? Why? Why are they doing this?
And it was, I mean, again, maybe it's intentional. I mean, obviously Zach Braff is above it all. He doesn't, we get the time lapse thing where he's just sitting on the couch. He can't, he doesn't
but
feel
he does
anything.
have the kiss with the person who is like thought of as maybe younger than 18.
But then but the whole party scene, I think it's revealed maybe they're like 25.
Yeah.
I think I was just trying to like, it just felt incongruous. I was like, how old are these people supposed to be? Because this is getting played out as a high school party.
Yes.
But they're like supposed to be adults. I'm like,
and they're doing hard drugs.
I'm like, I don't think adults behave like that. I mean, maybe some do in their early 20s, but I don't know.
Like, because I remember us both looking at each other during this movie being like, wait, how old are they?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's playing them as though they're like 21. Other times it's like they're 35. Like, I don't really know what's happening. But yes, they go to this party. He falls asleep. People draw dicks on him. Ha ha ha. All over his body as well. It's revealed later. He goes to this doctor. And
he wakes up. Old Sheldon is there.
Sheldon is there in a night. This is never explained again.
Never explained. Which I was like, was there a deleted scene? Because it's Old Sheldon is.
I love how you're calling him to old Sheldon. What's his name? Tim Parsons or something?
Jim Parsons. Oh, he's young old Sheldon. It's old Sheldon, but young.
That's actually the next show that's coming out.
Young old Sheldon.
Yeah, young old Sheldon.
They're going to use the de-aging technology from The Irishman. But again, this feels like another thing where he's like, night eating cereal. That'd be a good visual gag.
Yeah,
but then he's
in full armor.
Yeah, sleeping with
the mom of his friend, who's
also I can't remember the actress. Also like a fairly well-known actress.
Yeah, and she's very much like, oh, I'm fucking the night over here. Like,
yeah,
ha, ha, ha.
But again,
lots of jokes.
Nothing happens with that.
No,
other than that, the guy, his friend, I can't remember his name, Peter Sarsgaard's the actor, is insecure about it, and he's kind of a fuck up.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And she's like trying to encourage him to like basically be in an MLM where she's like, if you get the tapes, it'll teach you how to be a realtor or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I think that there is some interesting ideas buried really deep under the surface of this movie. Like there's the idea or the thing to explore of like the sort of wasting away feeling of your like early 20s when you're out of college, where you're just like, I have no direction. I don't know what to do. No one has prepared me for real life. And like, I am just sort of stumbling through it. And like, kind of Peter Sarsgaard's character is the most interesting out of all of them, because he does have sort of like you said, he's a fuck up, but he also kind of knows it, and he wants to change it, but I don't think he feels like he can.
Maybe
I don't know.
like disdain. I don't know. I despised his character.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, he's not
he's not a good guy, and that's intentional at least. But I was just like,
But he's sort of played like he is because of the end. But we'll get there. But like,
But I do think that like some of the stuff, the very little amount of this movie that works for me, maybe the only thing that I was like, oh yeah, was towards the end he has like a monologue or part of his conversation with Natalie Portman about like the idea of home. Yeah. When he's like, and I do think that kind of touches on that like early 20s like ennui where you're like, I've moved away from home. I've graduated. I mean, not for him, he didn't go to, but I've graduated college and now I'm like, what am I doing?
What am I supposed to do? Yeah. But I think that there's also this kind of weird B/C plot where like another friend of his from high school who is like one of the person who supplies all the drugs invented silent Velcro. Yeah. And that has made him a mega millionaire kind of thing. And he has like this empty mansion and it's like very clearly like, oh, look at what money gets you. A big empty house. Yeah. You have to fill it with all this debauchery, high school girls who don't even know who you are, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, like there's something there, I guess, but also the way you did it is not great, I guess. Yeah. I don't know, man. So they do the party, and then the morning after the party, he's really late for his appointment after he gets some cereal with the knight. What a weird movie. In the waiting room, we meet Sam, who is Natalie Portman. Yeah. And she is so weird. Right off the bat, it's like there's this person walking in who's like low vision and has a service dog, goes and sits in the back. The service dog just like walks over to Zach Braff and starts humping his leg for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And it just feels like something he wrote down on a post-it note and was like, huh, like service dog humping leg. That'd be funny. Yeah. I'll put in my movie.
And he never like, he never really tries to stop the dog in any way. He's just like, stop. I
don't even think he says anything. He's just like, I'm like, fucking do something, man.
Yeah. And then Sam, this other person in the waiting room, just starts like laughing at him. And he's like, do you have suggestions? And they kind of hit it off in sort of like a flirty way.
I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so. And he comes she comes and sits down and is like, what are you here for? And it turns out that like everything she says to him, she's like lying to him, and he kind of figures it out because she says that she's not there for anything. And then when he goes into the doctor, they're like, oh, we'll be right with you, you sick person. Like you have sickness. So I think that we should probably break down this scene because I have nightmares about it.
Because you hate the shins?
I hate the shins. No, okay. But there's the whole part where she like sits down. She's like, who are you? Why do I know you? And he's like, well, I'm an actor. And she's like, oh, anything I would know? And he's like, yeah, I played like Rufus and whatever. And she's like, oh, the bleep, like on the football team. Yeah. Hard R word. Yeah. Like, and it felt like 10 minutes. You and I were like looking at each other as she proceeds to like just say it like 100 times. Yeah. I don't know why that's in there. I don't know. Like, I don't think that even then that word was used like that, was it?
It's hard to remember, but it's not necessary. I guess it's to show that she's like different and not
she doesn't
afraid
care
to say. Yeah,
she doesn't care about his
but
status.
I don't even think
whatever.
she like. It doesn't even really fit that well with her characterization.
Yeah, but she never does that, and she's not like mean.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It's like not like to think about Eternal Sunshine. Like Clementine has more of the mean edge. Yeah. Whereas she's just like, oh, I'm so quirky, but also
I'm
like
so quirky and adorable,
angelic. Yeah. It is. Yeah. It's just. Yeah. It's just. I don't know. It feels.
Yeah, and it really made no sense to me. And she's like, "Oh, I thought you would be Bleep because you played Bleep so well." And I was like, "Would you think that?" Because Tropic Thunder kind of does this too, with like Ben Stiller playing the like mentally handicapped, and that's like his big claim to fame is like this comedy series he's done with that. Yeah, this came out earlier than that. So I guess it was still in the lexicon. But
I mean, I think it
feels crazy, man. It feels absolutely batshit crazy.
Yeah, I could see like the charitable read I'll give to it is like, okay, this is at a time when you have your Forrest Gump, things like Rain Man and stuff have come out. Just thinking more about Zach Braff's funny little ideas.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe this is an idea he has of this guy that's gone to LA to be an actor, but the only roles he can get are as developmentally disabled people.
Yeah.
Whereas like in actual Hollywood, what you'd have is these major stars doing your Forrest Gump or your Rain Man, and they're like, oh, what a performance! Give this man the Oscar. And so yeah, maybe the idea of it is playing with that, but. Yeah, just as the like being part of their meet cute, it really kind of sours the whole relationship from the start.
Yeah.
For the viewer.
Yeah.
For the 2024 viewer.
It also sets up a really weird power dynamic. I mean, maybe the meet cute, not just that part of the scene, but where it always kind of puts him as in sort of like an elevated position, almost like a not paternal, but like
no, it is, because then later he has the thing where he kind of snaps and is like, I want to protect you.
Yeah.
And even that's not really like, I think she kind of says I don't need protecting, but
but not really. But he's like, no, but I want to, and she's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, there's
okay, so they go, apparently she's sort of like a pathological liar. It sets that up too. And they go to the psychiatrist, and he's like, you shouldn't get pills from your dad. This is pretty fucked up. And also, maybe you shouldn't just stop all of your pills all at once. And I was like, well, that's the migraine. That's the weird zapping thing that he's had in his brain. I've accidentally gone off my medication, like, very suddenly, and man, it is like somebody like attaches like a car battery to your brain for a second. It's like a very weird feeling. So immediately I was like, of course that's what it is. Like, you didn't think at all that that's what it would be. So stupid. Also, if he had been on that many pills since he was like 10, which is what the script wants you to believe, him just stopping would be debilitating. Like, he would have had such chemical imbalances in his brain. Not even talking because later it's like, oh, is he even sick, or was his dad just trying to blame him?
That's the thing too, is he's played as being so like numb to the world, and we're meant to believe that was because of the medication, but the entire movie he stopped taking his medication.
Yeah.
So you are like, why? What? I don't understand. Is the medication making you numb, or is this just you, or is it your trauma that's making you numb? I don't know.
Maybe it's both. Why not both? So they go, and he's been on lithium, which is like pretty hardcore. Like, lithium, I remember, is like not something that is prescribed easily. I don't really remember. I'm on a completely different antidepressant, so I'm not sure. But for me, lithium has always been like, ooh, that's a big one. But he's on different mood stabilizers. They have that conversation, and then he runs into Sam outside when he's going home on his World War II bike with the sidecar. Again,
another thing that's like cool visual. This looks cool.
Yeah,
but you're like.
And apparently it's his grandfather's. Yeah. And he didn't want anyone to have it but him. It's kind of like, okay, weird that you have a World War I.
Special little boy.
Yeah, special little boy. And he offers her a ride home. They go home. She invites him inside. They kind of see. I was also uncomfortable with the introduction of her like brother that's from Africa.
Again, it feels like it's going to be played as a joke.
Yeah, isn't this weird? The first scene, there's like some weird tension between the brother and Zach Braff's character. And I sort of was like, oh, he fucking sees through this guy. He knows that this guy's a piece of shit. No, he was just like...
Don't forget who wrote and directed this movie.
And he's
the hero.
But then the next time that they meet, he's like totally fine. And is also a little bit more silly than everyone else. And I kind of liked it.
Yes.
He's the only character I liked.
It just feels like another thing to be like, oh my God, I'm so random.
It's so
I have an adopted brother and we have a bunch of hamsters and they keep dying. Because he's not given anything to do.
Except for dust the remotes for Prince, which was very silly. And he's like, the prints lead to the fact that it might be a dog. And it's like, yeah, you have dogs everywhere. And it's sort of the joke, I guess.
Yeah, but again, in a movie that's kind of largely devoid of like straightforward punchlines like that, is just like, doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's like if somebody were to do something like that and, I wanted to say Eternal Sunshine, but I was like, it might work. It might work. I don't know. So I didn't like that. And then it is revealed that she has epilepsy.
Yes.
By the doc. Like maybe it was a little bit ago at the doctor's office that Sam has epilepsy, and that's why she can't figure skate anymore. And she was really good at it. And they put on a video of her skating in a big moose outfit. Or was it an alligator? I think it was
She
an alligator.
Yeah. But she doesn't want him to watch it.
Yeah. It's just like her dream was crushed or something. It never really has gone into her internal life is confusing to me. I don't really know ever what she wants or doesn't want or what.
Which I think is kind of the point. The manic pixie dream girl. No, yeah, she has there's no coherent like wants or desires for her, like interior life.
Yeah.
There's no real understanding of why they like each other.
Yeah, really the only time we have any sort of emotional moment between them is when she gets mad at him because he's making fun of her hamster that died, but she put like the wrong thing in the cage, and she's like, no, shut the fuck up. Like, this was my hamster. And a lot of them die, but I love them. And so she gives like a little eulogy. Is the only reason where I'm like, or the only moment in the whole film where I'm like, yeah, she has like a point of view.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, she is just kind of like following him around for this series of kind of adventures after that.
Yeah.
But then, is it in the same scene when they go up to her room? I think she takes him up to her room.
Oh yeah.
And shows him her room. This was just the scene that really just like, grrr. When she's like, they're talking about somehow like being stuck or emotional, and she's like, when I feel emotional, I just have to do something totally random.
Yeah.
I'm so random.
Oh yeah, this is the first time I've ever done this in the
I
entire
just
world.
move and I make a sound, and like it's just so like 2004.
Yeah.
Like LOL, I'm so random.
Yeah.
Bacon unicorn taco cat, just like it just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, there are full scenes in this movie where I'm like, I don't want to. Like, I want to look away. I want to look at my phone. I want to do anything but have to be with these two people. I don't know, man. It's just like, it was hard, man. There were parts where I was just shaking my head slowly.
We paused the movie, I think halfway through, and you went to the other room to ask Alice because she had watched it.
Yeah, if it gets better.
Yeah, recently. Or I think even just, if anything, if there's a plot. Because up until this point, there wasn't a coherent...
Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot about that. The whole front half of the movie is just like loosely connected to each other.
And after watching it, I was like, a movie it kind of reminds me of, but is definitely worse than, is Train Spotting. Have you seen Train Spotting?
Yes.
I feel like Train Spotting is similarly just kind of a collection of different scenes, and that kind of coheres into a narrative at the end, and you're kind of following
it does. But also Train Spotting, I mean, we're building a hypothesis here, and I think that you may have hit on something where like Train Spotting was the movie that all of like the film kids in the like 2000s were like, this movie is so fucking good.
Yeah.
This is cinema. And I think that Zach Braff was one of those
I think
people.
he might have been. Because I was like, why are like his friends so unlikable and shitty? And I was like, well,
awful, man.
Kind of like the deal. But in Train Spotting, they're like so unlikable. But it's also like because they're drug addicts.
Hard drugs. Yeah.
There's a reason they're like this. But also, we can do an episode on Train Spotting too.
Yeah.
Because Train Spotting, you're also like, I think
Bullet
some
Train
of them are
versus
just
Train
like Snowpiercer.
Oh my God,
Find
there
all
you
the
go.
train movies. Anyways. Now we gotta talk about this movie. So what happens? So they go
to the mansion after spending like a day together.
They go to the mansion.
And
They swim.
They swim.
Zach Braff doesn't jump in. Everyone jumps in.
Because he can't
Zach
swim.
Braff, he can't swim.
Again, there's another. It's very clearly supposed to be played for laughs, but him trying to swim but not knowing how.
Yeah.
And her like kind of just like pushing him to the shallow end.
Or like everyone like kind of staring at him.
Yeah. It's definitely played like, this is silly.
Yeah.
And then the whole rest of the movie is like, none of this is silly. You take it seriously, you motherfucker. And so then they go into like the bathtub right? Or was that, or this is the fireplace. They like sit in front of this huge fireplace that's crackling. Everyone else drives their golf cart inside away.
Yeah.
And we find out why he and his father have a bad relationship, which is that his mother, who is in a wheelchair, is actually paraplegic because he pushed her, and there was like a dishwasher lid that was open, and she tripped over it and broke her spine, and she couldn't use her legs anymore. And he's always been like carrying that with him, but also his dad was like, it's your fault. You were angry, and that's why they put him on all these medications.
Which is like maybe the most interesting thing plot-wise of the movie.
It is just an interesting dynamic, right?
This idea of being a child and like having a horrific accident happen that you feel like is your fault, but like is just a freak accident.
I mean, honestly, it's also kind of like the childhood scenes in Eternal Sunshine, because there's the thing of how you blame yourself even though it was all these other people that were like pushing you to do this, and it's like this moment that just like got away from you and you do something horrible. And I thought that maybe it was, but it's also never like shown visually. It's just him slowly talking in front of a fireplace and her just listening. Yeah.
And there's kind of this idea of like, it's just that one like stupid piece of plastic that like caused all of this.
Yeah.
I just watched a movie that I think deals with this kind of thing in a much better way. Anime movie called Tokyo Godfathers. Have you seen it?
Yeah. It's so good.
It's so good. But the whole thing is, you have these characters who are all homeless, and you kind of learn their backstories, and they all kind of, in a way, have, done, the things that led them to them were kind of minor incidents that, they got blown out of proportion, or just something like that, a mistake that they made and like have been living with ever since. So just a little recommendation thrown in there. If you want to watch a movie of characters
that explores this
fully
specific
fleshed
thing.
out characters who have interior lives and motivations, like dealing with past traumas and like trying to reconcile and like deal with family.
Anime is so good.
Yeah.
We talked about it in a different thing, and it's going to come out in 2 weeks, so enjoy it then. But the thing about the subtitles, I think I like subtitles so much is because I watched so much anime when I was a kid, and I had to watch the subtitles. So my brain got good at like splitting the text away from the visuals. Anyway, okay, so this is revealed. It's a big moment. He and Sam share a kiss. They're in love now. And you better respect that.
If you would have asked me when they had their, we watched Eternal Sunshine
months ago.
Not months ago. We watched Eternal Sunshine first. We watched Garden State fairly recently.
Last week, yeah.
If you asked me when they had their first kiss, I would struggle.
Because it doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
The fact that she is even in his life only matters at the very end as like a choice that he makes. It literally, she's in the whole movie for that one scene at the end. It feels like.
Yeah, I think so.
It's so weird. Like I've never seen a character so groundless. Like it could be revealed like, oh, she was a ghost the whole time, and you'd be like, oh, okay. We're like, okay, yeah. We're like, oh, it's all in his head. It's all the medicine, and it's like, is that more interesting than what it is? I don't know.
Probably.
Very silly. But yeah, so they have a kiss. One thing that we skipped over a long time ago is that when he like is hanging out with his grave digging buddies, it's revealed that Skarsgård steals all of the jewelry from the bodies, and has done so most likely with Zach Braff's mom.
Right.
Which I will say, if I hadn't read that after, I completely missed this as a plot point. I was like, what are they talking about? And I had to read it afterwards. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. But he steals all of this stuff and sells it to make some money.
Yeah, I still don't totally understand. I think we're getting to the scavenger hunt they go to.
Yeah.
I still don't totally understand. Is the idea that he stole the jewelry from her and then sold it, and then he's
all of it.
going to get it back from
This one piece, at least.
the guy that it ended up with?
Yep.
Okay.
And so he takes them on this like whole scavenger hunt around town.
Is it his birthday? Is that what
It is his birthday.
Like he's like, it's your birthday. I have something planned. And he's like, what is it? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you.
And he's like, I kind of want to hang out with Sam. And he's like, just bring Sam with you. I don't care. It's like very That's very weird. I don't know.
And
It's
she's like, okay, I'm just here.
yeah, it's like, but you would think that like this person who is basically revealing to their friend, like, yeah, I did steal your mom's stuff and I'm so sorry. And here it is back. Like, I appreciate you, man, kind of thing. You probably wouldn't want to do that in front of this person you've never met. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels weird.
But they don't really like give that. You don't get that emotional catharsis of him giving the thing. Like, you don't get the scene where he's like, "I'm sorry." You know, it kind of just happens, and you're like, "Oh, I think that."
It's like bro love,
I guess
or whatever.
so,
Where it's
yeah.
like, yeah, got you that thing back, and he's like, "Oh, cool, man," because no one can be vulnerable in this movie.
No.
But yeah, they do all these weird things where they like climb in the rain and they go down this canyon, and they're like, "Oh, this canyon could be bottomless." In fact, the guy who lives at the bottom in this little boat is put there by a company to make sure nobody goes into the cave, which is such a better movie. I want to know.
See that guy's life.
Yeah, I want to see that guy's life. I want to know what he finds in the cave. There's so much stuff.
That's the thing.
to
Yeah,
do.
you get it's like Jennifer's body with the hole. I'm like, tell me about the hole.
Why do scientists?
Because
I
it was
guess?
like they want to build a mall there, but they found this giant canyon in the middle of New Jersey. I was trying to find that actor. I'm pretty sure that guy was on Lost.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, and he has like such a weird way of speaking that is so like poetic and kind of Wes Anderson-y, but also kind of just like first year acting, write yourself a monologue, which I think is what this was actually. But he has this whole thing about how he is, you know, trying to stop these people from going in, but he doesn't care about the corporation. He explores it all. And I think it's kind of all for that one line where Zach Braff is like, I hope you have fun exploring the abyss or whatever.
Yep.
Which is all kind of, you know, a metaphor for like not being on your medication anymore, which is again the whole thing where he's like, I'm not going to be on my medication anymore. And they get up onto a little minivan and they scream into the abyss.
And they're wearing trash bags. But another little, we get a little Nietzsche nod, like in Eternal Sunshine. But in Eternal Sunshine, you're like, look how insufferable this character is. She won't stop quoting Nietzsche.
And in this one, it's
they're
like, wow.
They're like, that's so deep. I never thought about the abyss.
So they do that. And then he gives him his pendant back, his mother's pendant back. And because he like located it and was like, yeah, this guy like likes secondhand or like antique jewelry. So I sell it to him and other people. So he got it back and gives it to him.
I still don't understand the whole sequence of them getting there, because they have to go to the hotel where all the workers at the hotel are watching people fuck through holes.
That is a scene that could be completely cut out and it would be fine. I don't either understand why.
What did he even? I don't remember what he gets from that guy. And it's Method Man too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he just was like, I don't know where that guy is, and the guy's
Yeah.
like, you gotta go to the canyon, man, or whatever. But it is all of these kind of like creepy, like guys like watching through holes in the wall.
But it's kind of like it's projecting onto the it's a weird that too just seems to exist in a space that's not the same reality as
like,
the rest
wow,
of the movie.
What a weird liminal space.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry.
It's like the white room at the beginning. It's like, this isn't a real person's room.
Right.
But the movie can't make up its mind about what style it kind of wants to go into.
No.
Yeah, and like when they scream into the abyss, again, there's like that Wes Anderson, like sort of like, this is a diorama, like, like
the big,
pullback.
like,
yeah. And never in any other part of the movie, it makes it just feel like, I don't know. I was just like so flummoxed, and visually it was so wrong with the rest of the movie that my brain just like didn't want to put it in the movie, I guess.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the visual thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt like it was at least an interesting choice that was being made.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. But then,
Then perhaps the most emotional scene of the entire movie. His dad, like laying in a very odd sort of like TV dinner way, watching like the news or something. He's like asleep and he comes in and they start finally having their heart-to-heart talk. And the talk does not involve the father at all. Like, he doesn't really speak at all. Zach Braff kind of like puts his hand on his father's chest and is like, I'm not going to be on my medicine anymore. And like, I'm here to say that I forgive you for everything you did.
Yeah.
And I'm over it. And it's going to be different now. And how unrealistic that entire conversation is. It's as though somebody is like imagining in their mind like how they wish they could say something to someone. You know what I mean? It feels so weird.
It does. He's like, shh, don't talk.
Yeah.
No.
And he's just sort of like I can't express how weirdly he just like puts his full open hand like
Right.
on his dad's like chest.
And you would think like it's such a weird scene because you don't, right, the whole movie, you get a few scenes with the dad. He doesn't have a ton to do. And it's clear that they can't
they're
communicate
estranged,
with each other. So you'd expect this scene to be them having a dialogue, but you really don't get that.
No, he doesn't really say anything and says just like Zach Braff talking at Bilbo, who's pretty stony faced through the whole thing.
Yeah. He doesn't reach for his ring once.
So that happens. He decides he's going to live his life with Sam now, but first, gotta go back to LA to do some stuff. He's got to take care of some shit so he can be a good boyfriend, not bad boyfriend, because LA has stuff that he has to finish up. So he's going to LA, and she's like, wait, like, I don't want you to go to LA. And then
I was so checked out by this
I know,
time in
it's
the
like,
movie. I was like,
why
I know
would he go
what's
back
happening.
to literally, Patrick, the first part of the movie when we see him in LA shows how shitty and empty his life is in LA. What does he have to tie up in LA?
Yeah.
It literally, the movie says he lives in a barren white apartment, works at a really shitty restaurant that can replace him at any moment. And he has to go back to what?
Get all his pills out of the cabinet.
He's got to dump them
Gotta
all
get
down
those
the toilet.
pills.
He's like, you changed my life. But also it's like, but I gotta become a better man before I can come back and we can be together. Which there's this whole thing as I've gotten older and been around, more complex, interesting people and people who have been in like relationships and everything. The idea of like the starter girlfriend kind of thing, like there's a real weird trend where men will use relationships with women to try to like fix a thing. And then they'll be like, I'm breaking up with you because I'm just like not ready. And like, I need to fix myself before I do that. And it's like, oh, you're with somebody else now. It's like very strange. Like, and this movie is that, you know what I mean? And, but he decides against it. He decides to come back and then they're together and he doesn't want to waste any more of his life without her. They kissed and they're like, now what do we do? Which is kind of how the whole movie feels like, which is like, okay, now what?
Yeah. That's it. I don't even remember.
That's how it ends. I just like Patrick.
Take off glasses.
Glasses are off, so I don't have to see. This movie is bad.
This movie's bad.
It's so bad. I am mad that people in the 2000s liked this movie. It is not a good movie.
I think they got duped. I don't even know. I don't want to give. I don't know. There's very little that I think we both found redeeming about this movie. I mean, there are performances that are fine.
Yeah.
But I think most of them.
Zach Braff's is not one of them. Natalie Portman's is not one of them.
Natalie Portman is. Yeah.
I literally turned to you and I was like, this makes me like Natalie Portman less. It makes me think that she is a worse actor than she is.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, I don't think she was the right casting choice. I don't know who you would cast in that part at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, she didn't seem like the right casting choice. But also the script is terrible. So I should. What were you gonna say?
You would cast like a 16-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the sort of like weird, like not quite logical, not quite like conscious person.
Maybe this movie would make more sense if it was high schoolers.
Yeah, I mean it
Which
would.
obviously you'd have to change things with him, but like the whole idea of like he's gone. But that's the thing was like he had to leave when he was like 9.
Yeah,
or no, 16?
No, he just became medicated when he was 10 or 9, and then
he was
left
gone
at
9
16.
Okay, so he left at 16. But yeah, this whole idea of he's gone away to.
That really tripped me up. Is they're like, man, you left like 9 years ago. Welcome back.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, so if they are 25, then he left home to go to LA at 16.
Well, no, I think he says he was like he was in like a medical facility.
Oh, he went.
then
No, he went to
LA.
boarding. He went to
Or
boarding school. Yeah,
Boarding school.
and then he went to LA and never came home.
Yeah. But it just no. And even the soundtrack. I mean, everyone's like, but the soundtrack.
It doesn't. It's not the same anymore.
I think
know what I mean?
and none of the songs really pop because there's no like emotional
Yeah.
backing to them.
Yeah, I didn't. None of this movie made me like any of those songs. You know what I
No.
mean? Which is like sort of a way I kind of grade this, because usually when I see something with like a really great soundtrack, I'm like, man, like Drive. Ooh, fuck. I love that soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it's because it's so intertwined with the movie that's like when I listen to it, I have an emotional reaction. And that's just synth.
Yeah. The power of the synth. No, this is like, I mean, you have the whole thing with the meet cute. She's like, oh my God, this song is going to change your life.
And it's the shit.
And it's a new song by the Shins, which feels like a punchline now.
Yeah, it
because I mean, I like the Shins a lot.
I mean, I had that song on my iPod
yeah.
for like so long, and I didn't even really know why, because I never saw Garden State, but that's probably because everyone saw it.
I want to know like what's the equivalent of this? This came out today, and somebody was like, "Oh my God, this song's gonna change your life," and they put. I don't think I know like music well enough, but I was just trying to think of just like
I feel like it would be
it'd be like Noah Khan.
yeah, I was like about to say like something like a Noah Khan, or it's definitely some like maybe it could still be like a Vampire Weekend or something. They just released an album.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just it feels weird, and also I did not like any part of this movie really, except for that one bit that we laughed at, which is the diploma on the ceiling.
Yeah. But I think it was an excellent choice to pair with Eternal Sunshine, because it also, with the manic pixie dream girl trope and just this whole type of movie, you like there's lines that are just like perfectly paralleled, because the whole thing with Eternal Sunshine is he's like, I thought you were going to change my life. She's like, I'm a whole person with my own things. He's like, I know, I still thought that. And then literally in the end of Garden State, he's like, you changed my life. You changed my life. And I've only known you 4 days. And you're like, oh my God. But maybe I'm like, maybe wait 2 years. Let's see because that's kind of what Eternal Sunshine's about, a relationship. This is about, people knowing each other. What was the other one? There was another one. Oh, the whole like, I feel safe when I'm with you. I feel so safe, which is kind of similar to when they're on the ice in Eternal Sunshine. He's like, I'm just the happiest I've ever been. Yeah. But you believe it there. Yeah. Because they have chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, and even like in that, it's like not even the thing about I'm so happy. I've never been, I could die right now. I'm just so happy. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's more part of like the situation. You know what I mean? It's like it is a magical moment. Yeah. This line that you just said was them both in like an empty hot tub. And it's the hot tub where his mom like died. And she definitely, my personal headcanon is that she died. Like she decided to drown herself because there's the whole thing where there's like that scene of him like holding the like hand guards on the tub. You know what I mean? Of her, that she would have been able to pull herself out with. Yeah. And so it's them sitting in that tub, and he's like, I just feel like, or she or somebody says like, I feel so safe with you. And it's like, this is such a weird place to have this scene.
Because I think like for comparing it to Eternal Sunshine, like Eternal Sunshine is doing a lot of really unique like visual and stylistic stuff, but like it is at the end of the day like a somewhat like it's not in a bad way, but it follows tropes of movies about romance and stuff. And I'd kind of like I feel like the most obvious takeaway is like, 'tis better to have loved and lost. And that's an idea that's existed forever, but it's told in such a great way where you actually like are.
It just feels unique, you know?
Yeah. And you feel, and I think it's also just the memory aspect is like, makes it so intimate that you like, understand this relationship,
because he's not hiding anything from you, because it's literally inside of his fucking brain. Yeah. So he's like vulnerable because you are witnessing his actual memories and how he feels about them. Yeah. In Garden State, he is completely unavailable. Like he is not vulnerable at all. Even in the moments where he's like, I've changed or whatever, he's still not vulnerable. I don't. I don't get it. I don't get why people like this movie. I'm sorry. I mean, Zach Braff apparently made other movies and was like thought of as like a really great director.
Yeah.
I don't, because the other thing you were saying about like, it is trope, like Eternal Sunshine has tropes, but it is a unique way of telling them. This feels like the opposite in that it has tropes and tells them the exact way you would expect them. Like from like a college age, like someone who's just like regurgitating like cliche almost.
And I thought going into this, not having seen it, not honestly, other than the visual stuff, which I was like super familiar with, not really knowing what it was about, I was expecting it to be like really kind of like saccharine and like cheesy more so. And I was like, maybe this will work for me. I know it's aged poorly, but maybe this will work for me because like I can be a sucker for something.
Yeah,
that's
me too.
Kind of like that. But it's so devoid of any relatable emotions.
Yeah.
And I think I haven't seen any of his other movies. He had one come out kind of recently, and maybe that's why I'm like conflating it with. I remember reading reviews of that where it was more kind of that type of movie. So maybe I don't know. Yeah, maybe he's changed his tune a little bit. But
I could see a lot of film kids in college like trying to write and make their first film, being like, "God, Garden State's so good." It's like Clerks almost, you know what I mean? Where everyone's like, fuck, I love Clerks. It's like, I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the manic pixie dream girl of it all. I think we kind of talked about it during the actual thing, but man, I don't know how you could ever think Clementine was a manic pixie dream girl if you thought Sam wasn't. You know what I mean? Like there is no way that those two, that Venn diagram is like so distant.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I mean, again, it's like, it's a trope because it became a trope, but like, yeah, Clementine, although she fits certain parts of that trope, like is a character and a person that has personality. And there's a reason that, Charlie Kaufman chose to write her character the way that she is, in contrast to Joel's personality, which does kind of fall in the line of kind of how these things typically work, where he is kind of the sad sack guy with no direction. Yeah, but it works because they're people. They're believable. And in this, Natalie Portman is just like a cloud. She's like a word cloud.
Does she have a job? Why does she live with her mother? How old is she? Like what is she? Is she like, I don't know. It's just like, I've learned zero about her other than she has hamsters. She has a mom. She has a brother, and her house is kind of like crazy busy and
right,
warm.
and no real clear understanding of why she's saved Zach Braff, other than she's
but he's like, you saved me or whatever. But he has come upon all these conclusions by himself. It feels like, and there's like that fight that they fight in air quotes, but like every time they come into opposition or whatever, it's always, even the way he holds her is very like, I own you. Like I don't know, maybe that's my own read on it, but like it feels very sort of like domineering and like I'm the important one. There is no like sharing of power in the relationship, because even when she wants to leave somewhere, she like pulls on her ear, which is like kind of a funny cute thing they decided upon. But later in the movie, when he is bringing her to yet another one of his dirtbag friends and she's like pulling on her ear, like she doesn't feel safe enough to either express her dislike of this moment or to leave it of her own accord. She has to go through him. You know what I mean? And a lot of this movie functions that way. Yeah.
Now, I don't know. Are there other like canon examples of Manic Pixie Dream?
The Scott Pilgrim's one.
Ramona Flowers for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to think. There's like 500 Days of Summer, but I think I
feel like that's different. Yeah.
I think that one's pointing it out, but I think a lot of people that watched it maybe didn't realize that. But
I would really like to do an episode someday that is like misunderstood movies, like the points of the movie what was misunderstood,
completely missed by the audience.
Yeah, because everyone in 500 Days of Summer is like, oh man, this movie's so fucking good. They're like so in love and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, he's horrible.
Yeah, the whole thing is that he sucks and has this whole vision. There's even there's a literal scene where it's played in split screen of what he thinks is going to happen and then what actually happens. Yeah. And I feel like that's the whole thing of this guy's perspective is so warped by like what he thinks a relationship should be and look like coming up against a real person who doesn't want to be in a relationship with him.
And this is the perfect way to like, I think, differ between these characters is Sam does not change at all from what is his name? Andrew's vision of her. He knows everything about her immediately, essentially. Like nothing at all changes from his conception of her, except that she like reveals she has epilepsy or whatever. That's not really changing his fundamental thoughts about who this person is. With Clementine, there's like several moments where his sort of like vision, or like people's vision of her, especially Elijah Wood's vision of her, runs up against who she actually is.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I don't fuck you, man. Like, like I reject you, which I think is so, I mean, it's amazing, but I also think it's just like, it disproves, I think, what people are saying about Eternal Sunshine. I don't know. I just don't think that they're the same at all, but it also could be the case that we started with like dramatic example with Garden State, like such a far data point that maybe this is closer to other things that are similar to Eternal Sunshine, where people are like, yeah, it's manic pixie dream girl, or the trope is there.
But I think it's I was reading the Wikipedia and the history of it. It was like it was an AV Club writer coined it in like 2005, and then I think it kind of got to that thing where then it was like oversaturated, where people were attributing to everything.
Yeah, people were like applying it.
Yeah. And then it kind of, because then it kind of like turned where the people, it's like, oh, well, now you're just kind of reducing all these actual characters to this trope in movies where that's not the case. And so I do feel like, there's the backlash, you have the backlash to the backlash kind of thing. And once it became a known thing, then people are like, oh, man, pointing it out. So I don't think it's always, even just pointing it out, doesn't necessarily like always tell you that much about.
Yeah, right.
Or necessarily mean that it's like a bad movie. If it's a character, there are character archetypes like throughout storytelling, that can be used in really effective ways and can be used in really lazy ways that like don't do anything with it. Yeah. And like one of the examples that was like cited as an early one is The Apartment. Have you seen The Apartment?
No.
It's Shirley MacLaine. It's a movie that I love, and I like hadn't thought of that, and then I like.
Is this the one about like the apartment that the person in the business rents for his superiors to like cheat on their wives?
Yeah.
And yeah.
I
mean, you sold me on wanting to watch it, so we should figure out a movie to pair it with. But
I have an idea. There's one that we put on the spreadsheet that maybe we can make it work.
All right, so let's start shutting this down. I think it's pretty clear. I think Eternal Sunshine is just like the far superior movie, just in pretty much every way. Sound design, even like the way that the songs come into the action in Garden State feels pretty abrupt, and like it takes me out of it. I think that people liked the soundtrack because it was kind of like Zach Braff being like, take a second and listen to this song. Isn't it good? Now back to the movie.
Right. You don't really, and you don't get much time with any of the songs either in the movie. So,
whereas Eternal Sunshine, it's not like a focal point, but the sound design is really excellent. There's like a lot of interesting I was about to say sonic cues. I'm going to stick with it. Sonic cues that I think were really interesting. I think that Garden State wins the Manic Pixie Dream Girl part of it. I think that is
pageant.
The pageant. And I don't know. Any closing thoughts on these movies?
No, I think it's just like pretty clear that like, and again, it's so fascinating the critical response to these movies at the time, because just like, the early 2000s can be a tricky time to go back and revisit media from. And
it was like during a realignment of cultural norms and values, you know what I mean? So
right. Which is, I think, is kind of constantly happening. That people are constantly freaking out about. But I think it's just clear like one of these movies stands head and shoulders above the other in terms of like staying power. Yeah. And I think Eternal Sunshine too, I feel like is even maybe gaining in its like general appreciation in the culture, if anything. I mean, I think it's generally been like pretty canonized as like a great movie of that era, but I feel like I've seen, especially on when you get like Letterboxd where they ask the celebrities or like filmmakers their top 4. I feel like I've seen it come up a lot with people citing it. I feel like Garden State is an 18-year-old's favorite movie, and Eternal Sunshine is like that same 18-year-old, but like 10 years later. You know what I mean? Who's like, wow, this is a great movie. Probably. And maybe we're sitting up on our
High horse.
on our high horse because neither of us watched this movie when we were
Yeah, I mean,
at
that is
age.
true. But I didn't watch Eternal Sunshine back in the early 2000s. I literally watched it for the first time like a year ago.
Yeah.
Which I think, to your point of like, you're like, I kind of like this movie better now. Like, I think that having that perspective looking back and now sitting with it now, I'm like, wow, this is such a fucking good movie.
Because that too, I'm curious how. Yeah, I feel like I can really relate to the characters in that movie. I don't know how old they're supposed to be, but I
think like 30s, maybe early 40s in some places, but I think
40s.
That's what Alice said. I think 30s feels right.
I think 30s. Yeah, I think 30s.
But I bet when we're 40, we'll be like, 40s feels right.
But no, I think there's a clear winner here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. That was Movie versus Movie. If you liked what you heard, you can go check us out on the internet. We have, I think, a Twitter and a Instagram somewhere. I'm going to get those back up and running. We also have a Patreon. I'm also going to get that back up and running. I think we'll probably drop some like bonus episodes in there someday or like little things that we do. But if you want to support the show, feel free to do that. We also do have an email. If you have a pair of movies that you really, 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 really want us to do, send us the theme that you want us to compare them on and also the movies to movie versus movie podcast at gmail.com. That's movie vs movie podcast at gmail.com. No spaces, no capitals, just the classics. We would love to do some movies that you guys want to hear. Any final words, Patrick?
No, I really enjoyed watching one of these movies with you. And I'm glad we watched them both together.
There was literally, I mean, I told you this before we went in, but I think it's funny still, is like, I was like, man, I hope I'm not going to really like this movie. And the amount of gratification that I felt after we were watching Garden State, where we looked at each other, we're both like, we both don't like this movie. I was like, yes, it's not me. But yep, we'll be back soon in your feeds. Next month, we're doing Joe Dirt versus
Hot Rod.
It's going to be great. I just saw Hot Rod the other night. I think we have a lot to talk about. All right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Movie versus movie.